The rumble of the motorcade was a familiar sound in Memphis. It was a low, powerful thrum that vibrated through the streets, announcing the passage of royalty. Not European royalty, but American royalty. The king himself, Elvis Presley. His custom Cadillac, a sleek, polished machine the color of midnight, led the procession, followed by a phalanx of equally impressive cars carrying his security detail, his friends, and various members of his entourage. Inside the Cadillac, Elvis leaned back against the plush leather seat, his eyes shielded by dark sunglasses. The air conditioning hummed softly, a counterpoint to the distant roar of the V8 engine. It was a Tuesday afternoon, hot and humid, typical for late summer in Tennessee. Elvis was on his way back to Graceland after a brief meeting downtown discussing some upcoming recording sessions. His mind was half on the new melodies swirling in his head, half on the simple pleasure of driving through his hometown. Even if it was from the insulated bubble of his limousine, he loved Memphis, loved the familiar streets, the shade of the old oak trees, the way the sunlight hit the brick buildings. Just so suddenly, the smooth, rhythmic journey was interrupted. A jarring jolt, a hiss of brakes, and the Cadillac came to an abrupt, unexpected halt. Elvis's head snapped up, his brow furrowing beneath the sunglasses. He wasn't one for unscheduled stops. His schedule was meticulous, his security paramount. Red West, his imposing bodyguard and cousin, who was driving, glanced in the rearview mirror, his face a mask of concern. "Everything all right, Red?" Elvis asked, his voice low, a hint of steel in it. "Not sure, Elvis. Something in the road," Red replied, peering through the windshield. But it wasn't a car or debris. As the other cars in the motorcade screeched to a halt behind them, forming an impromptu blockade, Elvis leaned forward, craning his neck. Through the tinted glass, he saw it, not an obstacle, but a small figure. A child. The boy was maybe 8 or 9 years old, slumped on the curb of the sidewalk, his small shoulders shaking. The sound of his distress, though muted by the heavy glass, seemed to pierce the insulated silence of the car. It was a raw, heart-wrenching sound, the unmistakable sob of a truly heartbroken child. Elvis felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He'd seen a lot of things in his life, faced roaring crowds, demanding managers, the relentless glare of the media. But a crying child always got to him. It was a pure, unfiltered sorrow that bypassed all the layers of fame and fortune, touching something deep within his own past, within his own simple, humble beginnings. He thought of his own childhood, growing up poor in Tupelo, the times he'd felt lost and helpless. "What is it, Red?" he asked again, his voice softer this time, his eyes fixed on the boy. "Looks like a kid, Elvis, crying," Red confirmed, already reaching for the radio to communicate with the rest of the security team. "Probably just needs a parent." "No," Elvis said, pushing himself upright. "Pull over to the curb. Stop this. We can't just—" "Red," Elvis interrupted, his tone firm, leaving no room for argument. "Pull over now." Red, knowing that tone, sighed. He was paid to protect Elvis, to keep him on schedule, to keep him safe. Stopping for a weeping child on the side of a busy street was definitely not in the protocol. There was no changing it. He put the car in park, the powerful engine idling behind them. Car doors were already opening. Bodyguards, serious men in dark suits, were fanning out their hands, subtly hovering near their waists. They were trained for threats, for crowd control, for emergencies. A crying child was an anomaly in their tactical playbook. Elvis reached for the door handle. "Let's go see what's wrong." "Elvis, with all due respect, it's not a good idea," said Joe, another security guard, leaning in from the front passenger seat. "Could be a setup. You never know." Elvis slowly turned his head, his sunglasses still on, though Joe could feel the intensity of his gaze. "A setup, Joe. Look at that boy. He's alone, and he's hurting. My mama taught me to never turn my back on someone in need, especially a child." He opened the door. The hot, humid air hit him immediately, thick and heavy. The silence of the stopped motorcade was almost eerie, broken only by the chirping of cicadas and the distant sound of city traffic. And then, as the last layers of insulation were shed, the full, raw sound of the boy's sobs reached him clearer, more poignant. It wasn't just crying, it was a profound wail filled with despair. He stepped out, his tall frame, instantly recognizable even with the dark glasses and the wide collar of his shirt heads, began to turn on the street. People driving by slowed down, squinting. Then their eyes widened in disbelief. Was that? No, it couldn't be. Not the Elvis, not stopping for a child on the side of the road. His security detail moved with practiced precision, forming a loose perimeter, their eyes scanning the surroundings. But Elvis ignored them, his gaze fixed on the small, huddled figure. The boy had his face buried in his knees, his small hands clasped over his head, as if trying to block out the world. A worn, faded backpack lay beside him on the cracked pavement. Elvis took a deep breath and began to walk towards the boy, his boots crunching lightly on the gravel near the curb. Each step was deliberate, his mind already formulating the gentle words he would use. He knew he had to be careful not to startle the child, not to overwhelm him, because right now, in this moment, he wasn't the king of rock and roll. He was just a man approaching a small, heartbroken boy, ready to offer whatever comfort he could. The small boy didn't look up as the large, dark form approached him. He was too consumed by his own sorrow. His world shrunk down to the burning ache in his chest and the salty taste of tears on his lips. His name was Timmy, and at 8 years old he felt like his entire world had just crumbled into a million pieces. Elvis stopped a few feet away, his security guards fanning out silently behind him, creating a human barrier between him and the growing number of curious. The murmur of voices grew louder as people recognized him. Whispers of, "Is that really Elvis?" and "What's going on?" rippled through the street. But Elvis's focus remained solely on Timmy. He knelt down slowly, carefully, so as not to appear menacing. His knees popped faintly as he lowered himself, bringing his face closer to the boy's level. Even though he was kneeling, his presence was still immense, a towering figure of charisma and power. Took off his sunglasses, revealing his kind, deep-set eyes, which were filled with genuine concern. "Hey there, little fella," Elvis said, his voice soft and low, a gentle rumble that was instantly recognizable but lacked any hint of his usual stage bravado. "What's got you so upset?" Timmy flinched, pulling his knees tighter to his chest, but he didn't raise his head. His small body trembled with each ragged sob. He was a small boy, thin, with dusty blue jeans and a faded t-shirt that looked a size too big for him. His hair, a light brown, was mussed and tangled from running his hands through it in distress. Elvis waited patiently, not pressing, just letting his presence be felt. He knew what it was like to feel overwhelmed, to feel like the world was too big and too harsh. He reached out a hand slowly, deliberately, not to touch, but to offer. He rested his hand gently on the worn backpack. Next to Timmy, a silent gesture of solidarity. "It's okay," Elvis murmured, his voice a soothing balm. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but sometimes talking about it makes things a little bit easier." He paused, then added, "My name's Elvis. What's yours?" Timmy sniffled a tiny sound, and finally, slowly, he lifted his head. His eyes, swollen and red-rimmed, were a startling blue, wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. He blinked a few times, trying to focus through the blur of his tears. His gaze swept over Elvis's famous face, then behind him, taking in the gleaming cars and the stern-faced men in suits. His lower lip quivered. Elvis?" Timmy whispered, his voice barely audible, thick with unshed tears. He probably thought he was dreaming, or that the heat had finally gotten to him. The king of rock and roll, kneeling on the sidewalk right in front of him. It was too much to comprehend. Elvis offered a gentle smile. "That's right, just Elvis, and you are." "Timmy," he managed to croak, a fresh wave of tears welling up in his eyes. The sight of Elvis's kind face, instead of making him feel better, seemed to intensify his grief, as if the unexpected kindness had finally breached his last defenses. He squeezed his eyes shut again, a fresh sob escaping him. "It looks like you're having a really tough day. Can you tell me what happened? Did you get lost?" Are you hurt? He scanned Timmy's small frame for any visible injuries but saw none. The distress seemed purely emotional. Timmy shook his head vigorously, still not opening his eyes. No, not lost, not hurt. He choked on the words, then took a shuddering breath. It's Buster. Elvis tilted his head, listening intently. Buster? Who's Buster? He hoped it wasn't another child, a friend perhaps who was also hurt or lost. Timmy finally opened his eyes again, tears still streaming down his cheeks, but now there was a desperate urgency in them. He pointed a trembling finger down the street towards a small, overgrown park, visible a few blocks away. He ran away. My dog Buster. The words tumbled out in a rush, a torrent of grief and fear. He slipped his leash. We were playing in the park, and a squirrel ran by, and he just ran. Elvis's heart sank. A lost dog. For a child, a pet wasn't just an animal. It was family, a best friend, a confidant. The depth of Timmy's anguish made perfect sense now. This wasn't just a lost toy. This was a lost part of his heart. "Oh, Timmy," Elvis said, his voice softening even further. "I'm so sorry to hear that. That's a terrible thing to happen." He thought of his own dogs back at Graceland, the pure joy they brought him. He couldn't imagine losing one. Timmy began to recount the story through his tears, hiccuping occasionally. He was right there. I called him, but he's so fast. I lived everywhere. I called his name, but he's gone. I can't find him. He's my best friend, Mr. Elvis, my very best friend. Elvis reached out and gently placed a hand on Timmy's shoulder. A light, comforting touch. He felt the small boy flinch slightly at first, then relax into the contact. Sounds like Buster is a very special dog. And I know how much it hurts when someone special goes missing. He looked around, scanning the quiet street, then back at the park. Did you look in the park, every corner? Timmy nodded, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. Everywhere. I yelled for him, but he didn't come. He always comes when I call him, always. His voice broke again. Elvis looked at the concerned faces of his security detail in the background, then back at Timmy's tear-streaked face. He knew what they were thinking, his schedule, his safety, the hundreds of other things he could be doing. But in this moment, none of that mattered. There was a little boy heartbroken on the side of the road and a missing dog. And Elvis, the man from Tupelo who never forgot where he came from, knew exactly what he had to do. He squeezed Timmy's shoulder gently. "Timmy," he said, his voice serious, but with an underlying current of resolve. "I think we need to find Buster." Timmy's blue eyes, still red and puffy, widened in disbelief. He looked at Elvis, then at the magnificent motorcade, then back at Elvis. "We," he whispered, hope flickering faintly in the depths of his despair. Elvis nodded, a determined glint in his eyes. "That's right, Timmy. We, you and me, and maybe some of my friends too. What kind of dog is Buster, and what does he look like?" He knew he was about to blow his schedule completely, probably cause a media frenzy, and give his security team a collective heart attack. But watching Timmy's face, seeing that tiny spark of hope ignite, Elvis knew it was the only right thing to do. Timmy, still sniffling, began to describe Buster. "My mom said we needed to get him a new one, after his last one broke." Elvis listened, nodding, already visualizing the dog. "A beagle?" They were known for following their noses for getting into trouble. "A beagle, huh? So he likes to sniff around. And a pirate patch, got it?" He stood up slowly, his gaze sweeping over his security team, who were now looking at him with a mixture of apprehension and utter bewilderment. Red, always the first to react, stepped forward. "Elvis, with all due respect, we have a schedule, and a missing dog isn't exactly our area of expertise." Elvis turned to him, his expression serious. "Red, for this boy it is. Look at him." He gestured to Timmy, who was still looking up at them, wide-eyed, a fragile hope blossoming on his tear-stained face. "He's lost his best friend. We can't just drive away and leave him here." "But Elvis, the motorcade, the public, It's too much of a security risk to just drive around looking for a dog, Joe added, stepping up beside Red. We've got cameras everywhere. People are starting to gather. This could get out of hand. Indeed, the small crowd had grown, and a few enterprising individuals were already snapping photos with small cameras, though cell phones weren't common yet. The word was spreading. Elvis Presley had stopped his motorcade for a child. Elvis understood their concerns. He truly did. His life was a whirlwind of commitments and dangers. But beneath the layers of fame and protection, he was still the same kind-hearted man from humble beginnings. He knew what mattered. Listen, Elvis said, his voice carrying an undeniable authority that silenced further protest. This is what we're going to do. We're going to help Timmy find Buster Red. I want you to drive slowly, Joe. You and the others keep an eye out. But also, keep an eye out for a beagle, with a black spot over his eye, a red collar. We'll start by going back towards the park and widen the search from there. He looked down at Timmy, who seemed to be holding his breath, afraid this incredible offer might be snatched away. Timmy, Elvis said gently, how about you ride with me? You can tell me exactly where you saw him last, and we can look together. Timmy's eyes widened further. If that was even possible. Ride in Elvis Presley's Cadillac. He nodded vigorously, unable to speak, a small, hopeful smile starting to form through his tear-streaked face. Elvis offered him his hand. Come on, then. Timmy tentatively reached out his small, grubby hand, and Elvis's larger, calloused one wrapped around it. Pulling him gently to his feet, he picked up Timmy's worn backpack, slinging it over his own shoulder, an almost comical sight against his flashy shirt. Red shook his head, but a slight, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips. He knew Elvis. He knew that when the king made up his mind, there was no stopping him. And he also knew that deep down Elvis was doing this because it was the right thing to do. He signaled to the rest of the motorcade, giving them the new, highly unusual instructions. As Elvis led Timmy towards the open door of the Cadillac, the crowd murmured in awe. Many of them had known people who had lost pets, understood the pain. To see Elvis, the biggest star in the world, taking the time to help a regular kid was something truly special. Inside the car, Timmy sat on the plush leather seat, which still felt warm from Elvis's body heat. He was so small he barely made a dent. He clutched his hands in his lap, still overwhelmed by the surreal turn of events. Elvis slid in beside him, closing the door softly. Red started the engine, and the powerful car began to move slowly, carefully. All right, Timmy, Elvis said, turning fully towards the boy. Tell me all about Buster. How long have you had him? What's his favorite game? He wanted to keep the boy talking, keep his mind off the immediate fear, and learn more about this beloved pet. Timmy, emboldened by Elvis's gentle interest, began to speak, his voice gaining a little more strength. I got him for my birthday 2 years ago. He was just a little puppy. My mom helped me pick him out. He went on to describe Buster's quirks, how he loved to chase squirrels even though he never caught them, how he'd bark at the mailman every day, how he snored when he slept, and how he always knew when Timmy was sad and would nudge his hand with his wet nose. Elvis listened intently, asking follow-up questions, creating a comfortable atmosphere in the luxurious car. He remembered getting his first dog, a little terrier mix, when he was just a boy. The simple, unconditional love of a pet was something truly precious. So, you said he ran towards the park? Elvis asked, guiding the conversation back to the search. Yes, Timmy confirmed, pointing a little finger. That way, past the big oak tree. Red, driving slowly, followed Timmy's directions. The motorcade, usually a blur of speed and purpose, now moved at a snail's pace, an anomaly on the bustling Memphis street. The security guards in the following cars peered out their windows, scanning sidewalks, alleys, and front yards for any sign of a small beagle. It was an absurd situation, but somehow it felt entirely right. As they approached the park, Timmy's anxiety started to rise again. What if he's really gone? What if he's scared? He gets scared of thunder. Elvis placed a comforting hand on Timmy's knee. Don't you worry, Timmy. We're going to do everything we can. Buster's a smart dog. He'll be looking for you too. We just need to give him a little help." He leaned forward slightly, looking out the window, his eyes scanning every shadow, every bush, every patch of green. "All right, everyone," he said, his voice amplified by a discreet intercom system to the other cars. "Keep your eyes peeled for Buster. Let's bring this little guy's best friend home." The search for Buster was unlike anything the city of Memphis had ever witnessed. Instead of a sleek procession speeding through the streets, the Elvis Presley motorcade crawled along, a peculiar convoy of luxury. Vehicles engaged in an unprecedented mission. Elvis's Cadillac led the way with Timmy surprisingly calm. Now serving as the navigator. "He likes to go near the big oak tree by the creek," Timmy explained, pointing a small finger out the window. "He chases the ducks sometimes, but he never catches them." Elvis relayed the information through the intercom. "All right, boys, near the creek, check the bushes, the water's edge. He might be hiding." The security team, initially bewildered, had quickly adapted. They were professionals, used to unusual situations, though lost dog search and rescue certainly stretched the definition. They peered intently from the windows of their sleek cars, their sharp eyes, usually trained on potential threats, now scanning for a small brown and white beagle. It was a bizarre, yet strangely unifying experience. Red behind the wheel drove with extreme care, his eyes constantly on the road, but also darting to the sidewalks and front yards. "We're getting a lot of attention, Elvis," he murmured, glancing in the rearview mirror. "People are pulling over, taking pictures. News crews are probably on their way." "Let them come," Elvis replied unconcerned. "If it means more eyes looking for Buster, then so be it." He leaned over to Timmy. "So, Timmy, what's Buster's favorite treat?" "Peanut butter," Timmy said instantly, a small smile finally gracing his lips. "He loves peanut butter on a spoon." "Good to know," Elvis chuckled. He imagined a small beagle happily licking peanut butter. It was a simple detail, but it brought a moment of lightness to the tension. They drove slowly around the perimeter of the park, then into the quieter residential streets that bordered it. Timmy occasionally called out Buster's name, his voice a little stronger each time, encouraged by Elvis's reassuring presence. Elvis himself rolled down his window, slightly letting the humid air in, and every now and then he'd call out, "Buster, come on, boy," his famous voice echoing surprisingly clearly down the street. It wasn't a real sound for the local residents, the king calling for a lost dog. A few curious neighbors, alerted by the slow-moving motorcade and the sight of Elvis, came out onto their porches. When they realized what was happening, some even joined the impromptu search, peering into their own yards, shouting out, "Did you see a beagle?" to their neighbors. "We saw a dog fitting that description about 20 minutes ago," an elderly woman called out from her porch, her eyes wide with amazement at seeing Elvis so close. He was heading down Elm Street, running pretty fast. Elvis spanked her warmly. The motorcade turned onto Elm Street, a quieter road lined with older, well-kept houses and shady trees. The sense of purpose within the cars was palpable. This wasn't just a PR stunt. This was a genuine effort. As they drove, Elvis continued to talk to Timmy. Learning more about him, Timmy lived with his mom, who worked long hours. Buster was his constant companion. He loved to draw, and his favorite subject was Buster. He missed his dad, his heart aching for the boy. He knew what it was like to grow up with a parent who worked hard and the longing for a complete family. "You know, Timmy," Elvis said, his voice thoughtful. "When I was a boy, my family didn't have much. We had to move around a lot, but my mama always told me, no matter how tough things get, you hold on to hope, and you never give up on the people you love or the dogs you love." Timmy looked up at Elvis, his blue eyes studying the famous face next to him. He was starting to feel less scared, more hopeful. Being with Elvis felt like being wrapped in a warm, strong blanket. They drove for another 15 minutes, slowly covering ground. Red making U-turns in wide streets, some striving down alleys. "That bear is... he's a smart dog, Timmy," Elvis reassured him, his hand reaching out to gently ruffle Timmy's hair. "He's probably just a little disoriented. We'll find him. We just need to be patient." Suddenly, the voice of one of the security guards crackled over the intercom. "Elvie, I think I saw something. Down that alleyway to the left." It was Frank from the second car. Elvis leaned forward, his eyes scanning the alley. "Red, pull over. Timmy, what do you think?" Timmy peered, his breath catching in his throat. Maybe it's him." The Cadillac screeched to a halt, followed by the rest of the motorcade. Elvis was out of the car in a flash, ignoring Red's protest. "Wait, Elvis. Let us check it out first." But Elvis was already halfway down the narrow, garbage-strewn alley. "Buster," he called out, his voice echoing between the brick walls. "Buster, come here, boy." Timmy, despite his small size, scrambled out of the car and ran after Elvis, his small legs pumping. "Buster, it's me, Buster." The alley was dark and smelled faintly of damp earth and discarded food. Empty bins lined the walls. For a moment there was nothing. Then, from behind a large dumpster, a small, tentative whimper. Elvis froze, his heart pounding. Timmy gasped. "Buster," Timmy whispered, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and surging hope. The whimper was faint, almost swallowed by the alley's damp silence, but it was there. Elvis and Timmy exchanged a wide-eyed look. Hope, fragile but potent, surged between them. "Buster, is that you, boy?" Elvis called out again, his voice gentle and coaxing, like he was trying to calm a skittish animal. He moved slowly, carefully, towards the large green dumpster. Timmy, a step behind him, clutching his hand. Now, the security team, though still concerned about the environment, had also sensed the shift in the air. They were fanning out, covering the alley entrance, but their eyes too were drawn to the source of the whimper. From behind the dumpster, a small furry head cautiously poked out. It was a beagle, all right. Its floppy ears were pressed flat against its head. Its brown and white fur was matted with what looked like dirt, and maybe a little grease. And its red collar was askew. The moment Timmy saw the black spot over its left eye, a joyful sob ripped from his throat. "Buster! Oh, Buster, you're okay!" Timmy cried, letting go of Elvis's hand and rushing forward. "Wait, Timmy, slow down," Elvis cautioned, but it was too late. Timmy, propelled by pure, unadulterated relief, launched himself towards the dog. Buster, initially hesitant, recognizing the small figure, let out a joyful bark and scrambled out from behind the dumpster. He was thin, a bit dirty, and clearly shaken, but his tail was wagging furiously, a blur of motion. He yelped with delight, practically knocking Timmy off his feet as he showered the boy's face with excited licks. Timmy wrapped his arms around the dog, burying his face in its matted fur. "Buster, you came back. Oh, I was so scared." His sobs returned, but these were different sobs of pure, overwhelming joy. Elvis watched the reunion, a warm feeling spreading through his chest. It was a simple, profound moment, yet it felt as significant as any sold-out concert. This was real. This was what truly mattered. He saw the relief wash over Timmy's small face, erasing the fear and sorrow that had been etched there just an hour ago. Buster, having thoroughly celebrated with Timmy, now turned his attention to Elvis, sniffing curiously at his boots, then looking up at the famous face. He gave a tentative wag of his tail, then, emboldened, gave a small happy bark as if to say, "Thank you, stranger." Elvis knelt down again, extending a hand slowly. "Well, hello there, Buster. You sure gave your best friend a scare." He gently scratched Buster behind his ears. The dog leaned into the touch, his tail thumping against the dirty ground. He truly was a sweet dog. Red and Joe, along with the rest of the security team, approached, their faces visibly relaxing. The tension that had been hanging over them for the past hour finally dissipated. "Looks like we found him," Elvis Red said, a rare, genuine smile on his face. "Good job, Buster. "He's a brave one," Elvis replied, still petting the dog. "Ran a long way, didn't she, boy?" Timmy, still clutching Buster, looked up at Elvis, his eyes sparkling with happy tears. "You found him, Mr. Elvis. You really found him. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." He sounded like he couldn't find enough words to express his gratitude. "You're very welcome, Timmy," Elvis said, his voice warm. He looked at Buster. The dog looked a little thin, and his fur was a mess. "He looks like he's had a bit of an adventure." "You think he's okay?" Timmy nodded. "He's a tough dog, just hungry, probably." Elvis stood up. "All right, then let's get you and Buster back to the car. We'll get him some water and maybe a little something to eat, and then we'll get you both home." As they walked back towards the Cadillac, with Timmy carefully holding Buster in his arms, the alley seemed less grimy, less intimidating. The setting sun cast a golden glow, making the dust motes dance in the air. The small crowd that had gathered at the mouth of the alley parted to let them through, cheering softly. There were no flashing cameras or shouting reporters yet, just a quiet sense of shared relief and admiration. Elvis opened the car door for Timmy and Buster. "No, he's okay here," Timmy said, his eyes glued to Buster. "He gets a little car sick sometimes if he's not on the floor." Elvis nodded. "All right, Red, let's get these two some water, and then Timmy, we'll take you home. Where do you live?" Timmy gave him his address a few more blocks away, in a modest neighborhood of small, tidy houses. As Red began to drive the car, once again moving at a normal pace, the tension inside the Cadillac completely melted away. Buster gave a contented sigh, his small body rising and falling with his breath. Timmy, still stroking, Buster leaned his head against the cool window, a peaceful, exhausted smile on his face. Elvis leaned back in his seat, watching the boy and his dog. He had interrupted his day, caused a security kerfuffle, and probably given his team a few more gray hairs. But looking at Timmy's serene face, knowing that Buster was safe, Elvis felt a profound sense of rightness. This, he realized, was more fulfilling than any award, any chart-topping hit. This was simply being human, helping another human in need. And in that moment it felt like the most important thing he'd done all day. The drive to Timmy's house was quiet, a calm after the storm of anxiety and the joyous reunion. Buster, curled on the floor of the Cadillac, was fast asleep, his small body rising and falling with each gentle breath. Timmy sat beside him, his hand resting protectively on the dog's back, a contented smile on his face. Elvis took the opportunity to observe Timmy more closely. The boy's clothes were clean, but worn, his shoes scuffed. His neighborhood, as they approached it, was neat but unpretentious. It reminded Elvis of the Memphis he knew before the glitz and the fame, the Memphis of hard-working families and simple lives. "So, Timmy," Elvis said softly, "careful not to wake Buster. Your mom will be mighty glad to see you and Buster. Does she know you were out looking for him?" Timmy shook his head, his gaze still fixed on Buster. "No, she's at work. She works at the diner until late. I came home from school and Buster was gone from the yard. The gate was open. I just had to find him." His voice was still a little hoarse from crying. Elvis felt another pang in his chest. A single mom working long hours, a boy left alone to worry about his lost dog. It was a familiar story of struggle and resilience. He thought of his own mother, Gladys, and how hard she had worked to give him what little they had. He respected Timmy's initiative, his fierce loyalty to Buster. "You're a good boy, Timmy," Elvis said, his voice sincere, "taking care of your best friend. Like that, your mom must be very proud of you." Timmy looked up, a shy blush coloring his cheeks. "She loves Buster too. She's going to be so happy." As they drove the last few blocks, Elvis's mind drifted to his own childhood. He remembered the simple joys, the challenges, the constant presence of music. He remembered how much a kind word, a helping hand had meant to his family when they were struggling. He had never forgotten those lessons, even as his life transformed into something beyond anyone's wildest dreams. This unexpected detour This search for a lost beagle felt like a vital connection back to that fundamental part of himself. "You know, when I was a boy, I used to have a dog named Roscoe," Elvis began, sharing a piece of his own history. "He was a mutt, but he was the best dog a boy could ask for. He'd follow me everywhere, even when I was trying to sneak off to play with my friends. He was always there." He smiled at the memory. "Losing a dog feels like losing a piece of your heart." Timmy nodded, understanding. "It really does. It's good that you didn't give up. That's important, Timmy, to never give up on something you truly care about." Cadillac pulled up in front of a small, neat house with a tidy lawn. A few flowers bloomed in a small bed by the porch. It looked like a home filled with care, even if resources were limited. "This is it," Timmy said, his voice full of relief. Red put the car in park. Joe and the other security guards were already out of their vehicles, scanning the street. Quiet neighborhood hadn't attracted the same frenzy as the busier streets, but a few neighbors were peering out their windows, their curiosity piqued by the sudden appearance of the famous motorcade. Elvis turned to Timmy. "All right, let's get you and Buster inside. We should probably make sure Buster gets a good meal and some water." As Elvis opened the door, he heard Buster stir, let out a happy little yip, and try to wiggle out from under Timmy's hand. Timmy carefully scooped him up, holding the dirty but beloved dog close. "Thank you, Mr. Elvis," Timmy said again, his eyes wide with gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Elvis smiled, a genuine warm smile that reached his eyes. "It was my pleasure, Timmy, really. I'm just glad we could help." He paused, a thought forming in his mind. He looked at the modest house, then back at Timmy's innocent face, the joy radiating from him now that Buster was safe. He felt a pull, a desire to do more, to extend this unexpected connection, Timmy. Elvis said slowly, his voice softening, "And we've got a vet who comes out regularly for my horses and dogs. We can make sure he's perfectly fine." Timmy's jaw dropped. His eyes, already wide, somehow managed to widen even further. Graceland, the legendary mansion. It was a place people only dreamed of seeing, and Elvis was inviting him. "Graceland," Timmy whispered, as if the word itself was too sacred to speak aloud. "But I can't, my mom." "We'll call your mom from inside," Elvis interrupted, already stepping out of the car. "We'll explain everything, don't you worry. What do you say, Buster? You want to come to Graceland?" He reached down and gently scratched Buster's head, and the dog responded with a happy thump of his tail. Timmy looked from Buster to Elvis, then back at his small house. It was an offer beyond his wildest imagination. A day at Graceland with Elvis Presley. It was a dream come true, a magical twist to a day that had started in utter despair. He nodded, unable to speak, a radiant smile finally breaking across his face. The next morning, the same black Cadillac, though without the full motorcade, pulled up to Timmy's modest house. Red was driving and Elvis was in the back. Timmy, scrubbed clean and wearing his best, though still slightly faded, clothes, stood on his porch, Buster by his side. His mom, a tired but kind-faced woman named Sarah, stood nervously behind him. Sarah had been utterly floored when Elvis had called her the previous night. She'd thought it was a prank at first, then a dream. When she finally processed that Elvis Presley had stopped his entire motorcade to help her son find his dog, she was speechless. She had thanked him profusely, her voice choked with emotion, and had, after much reassurances from Elvis, agreed to let Timmy visit Graceland. "You sure you have everything, Timmy?" Sarah asked, adjusting his collar. "Be a good boy, and tell Mr. Presley, thank you again properly." "I will, Mom," Timmy promised, his eyes shining with excitement. Buster, freshly bathed by Timmy and Sarah the night before, now looked like a proper, well-loved beagle. Albeit still a little thin, his red collar was clean, and his tail wagged constantly. Elvis stepped out of the Cadillac, a warm smile on his face. "Good morning, Timmy." "Good morning, Sarah." He greeted Sarah with a polite nod, his famous charm instantly putting her at ease. "Buster's looking much better after his bath, I see." Buster, recognizing Elvis, let out a happy bark and bounded towards him. Sniffing his shoes, Elvis bent down and scratched Buster behind the ears. Timmy, still a little shy, clutched a small plastic bag in his hand. "He's got his leash and some of his special peanut butter treats," he explained, holding up the bag. Elvis chuckled. "Perfect. We'll make sure he's got all the peanut butter he can eat." He looked at Sarah. "We'll take good care of him, Sarah. And Timmy, you don't worry about a thing." "I know you will, Mr. Presley," Sarah said, a genuine smile gracing her lips. "Thank you, truly, for everything." He hasn't stopped talking about it. "My pleasure," Elvis replied, truly meaning it. He waved goodbye to Sarah as Timmy and Buster got into the car. Buster settled on the floor again, sniffing around curiously while Timmy sat in the seat practically vibrating with excitement. The drive to Graceland was short, but for Timmy, it felt like a journey to another world. As the iconic gates of Graceland came into view, he gasped. The mansion, even larger and grander than in pictures, seemed to glow under the morning sun. "Wow," Timmy whispered, his face pressed against the window. "It's huge. It's home," Elvis said, a quiet warmth in his voice. "Come on, let's go explore." The car drove up the long, winding driveway, past the familiar stone lines and the sprawling lawns. Other staff members were already outside, ready to greet them. They had all been briefed on the special guests. As soon as the car stopped, Timmy was out carefully coaxing Buster out of the car. Buster, sensing the wide, open spaces, immediately took off tail wagging, exploring the grounds with an excited energy. "He's got some pep in his step now, doesn't he?" Elvis laughed, watching Buster bound across the lawn. The first stop was the stable, where Elvis introduced Timmy to his horses. Timmy, who had only ever seen horses in books, was mesmerized. Elvis patiently answered all his questions, showing him how to gently pet their noses, explaining their habit. Buster, meanwhile, was having a grand time, sniffing every blade of grass, occasionally glancing back at Timmy, as if to say, "This place is amazing." Next they met Elvis's own dogs, a motley crew of various breeds. The dogs used to new visitors, sniffed Buster curiously, and after a few cautious sniffs, they were all wagging their tails, accepting Buster into their canine pack. Timmy watched delighted as Buster chased a ball with Elvis's poodle. Then came the vet. Dr. Miller, a kind-faced woman with gentle hands, gave Buster a thorough checkup right there on the lawn. She confirmed that Buster was indeed a bit underweight and needed some deworming, but otherwise he was healthy and just needed good food and rest. Elvis personally assured Timmy that Buster would get the best care and that all the expenses would be taken care of. After Buster was given a clean bill of health, Elvis took Timmy inside Graceland. Timmy walked through the famous rooms in awe, his eyes wide as saucers. The music room, the jungle room with its exotic furniture, the trophy room filled with gold, records, and awards. It was all almost too much to take in. Elvis didn't rush him. He acted as a patient guide, telling stories about the various items, answering Timmy's curious questions. He showed Timmy his collection of police badges, which fascinated the boy. He even let Timmy sit on the famous white sofa in the living room. "Is this real?" Timmy whispered at one point, touching a velvet curtain in the dining room, as if to confirm he wasn't dreaming. Elvis chuckled. "As real as it gets, Timmy." He looked at the boy, who was still processing a whirlwind of the past 24 hours. "You know, Timmy, this house, all these things, they're nice, but what really matters are the people you share your life with and the friends you have, like Buster." Timmy nodded, his small hand instinctively reaching for the pocket where he kept a tiny worn photo of Buster. He understood. Even in this grand place, with all its splendor, Elvis was saying that the simplest things, like a lost dog and a loving friend, were the most important. The afternoon at Graceland continued to unfold like a dream for Timmy. After the tour of the main house, Elvis took him out to the sprawling grounds again. Buster, now fully recovered and energized, ran happily with Elvis's other dogs, occasionally stopping to get a belly rub from Elvis or a reassuring pat from Timmy. Elvis led Timmy to the back of the property where there was a small shaded area with a picnic table. A spread of sandwiches, fruit, and cookies had been laid out by the Graceland staff. "Hungry, Timmy?" Elvis asked, gesturing towards the food. All that running around with Buster must have worked up an appetite. Timmy, who had been too overwhelmed to feel hungry earlier, suddenly realized he was starving. He sat down eagerly, reaching for a sandwich. "Thank you, Mr. Elvis." As they ate, Elvis continued to chat with Timmy, not about fame or music, but about everyday things. He asked Timmy about school, about his friends, about what he liked to do for fun. Timmy, slowly losing his shyness, talked about his love for drawing, his struggles with math, and how much he loved playing baseball in the park. Elvis listened intently, offering encouragement and sharing anecdotes from his own childhood. He talked about growing up in poverty, his early struggles to make ends meet, and how he never forgot the kindness of strangers. He spoke with a genuine humility that made Timmy forget he was talking to the biggest star in the world. He was just talking to a really nice, understanding man. "You know, Timmy," Elvis said, taking a bite of an apple, "life can be tough sometimes. Things go wrong, like Buster getting lost. But sometimes, when things go wrong, it leads to something good, something you never expected." He gestured around at Graceland, at the sun filtering through the trees, at Buster happily panting at their feet. "Like you and Buster getting to come here today." Timmy nodded, reflecting on the truth of that statement. If Buster hadn't run away, he never would have met Elvis. It was a strange thought, but it made sense. As the afternoon wore on, Elvis, perhaps seeing the slight fatigue in Timmy's eyes, began to wind down the activities. He brought Timmy back into the house and gave him a small signed photo of himself. "Something to remember our adventure by, Timmy," he said. Timmy clutched the photo like it was pure gold. "Thank you, Mr. Elvis. This is the best day ever, even better than my birthday," Elvis smiled, a genuine warmth radiating from him. "I'm glad, Timmy, I truly am." Pause, then looked at Timmy with a thoughtful expression. "You know you're a good kid, Timmy, a brave kid, and I want you to know that if you ever need anything at all, you can always reach out." He took a small, pristine card from his wallet. It had a phone number, not a public one, but a private line. "This is a special number if you ever need to talk or if Buster needs anything. It'll reach my assistant and she'll get the message to me." Timmy took the card, his small fingers trembling slightly. It was an incredible gesture, a direct line to the king. He knew how special this was. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Red then came to let them know it was time to take Timmy home. Saying goodbye was harder than Timmy expected. He had only known Elvis for a day, but it felt like a lifetime. He had found his dog visited a magical place and made an unexpected, extraordinary friend. As Red drove Timmy and Buster back to their house, Timmy leaned against the window, watching the world go by. Buster was asleep on the floor again, exhausted from his day of adventure. Timmy clutched the signed photo and the special card in his hand. He knew his life had changed profoundly and beautifully. When they pulled up to his house, Sarah was waiting on the porch, her face a mixture of anxiety and relief. She rushed forward, pulling Timmy into a tight hug. "Oh, Timmy, my boy, are you okay? And Buster?" "We're fine, Mom. Buster's fine. And I had the best time. I saw the horses and all his dogs and the jungle room." Timmy burst out, practically bouncing with excitement, still carrying the signed photo and the card. Red, seeing Sarah's worried face, gently explained what had transpired, how well Buster had been cared for, and how much Elvis had enjoyed Timmy's company. He handed Sarah a small sealed envelope. "Mr. Presley asked me to give you this. It's a gift just to help with Buster's care, and anything else you might need." Sarah opened the envelope, her eyes widening as she saw the crisp $100 bills inside. It was a significant amount for her. A lifeline tears welled up in her eyes. "Oh my goodness, this is too much." "Please, tell Mr. Presley," he insisted. "Ma'am," Red said gently. He really took a shine to Timmy, and to butt overflowing. She knew that Elvis's kindness wasn't just about the money or the celebrity. It was about seeing a need and meeting it, without fanfare, without expectation of return. It was about pure human compassion. As Red drove away, Timmy stood on his porch waving until the black Cadillac was out of sight. He looked at Buster, who was already sniffing around the yard, happy to be home. He looked at the photo, then at the card. His adventure was over, but something lasting had begun. He knew he would never forget the day Elvis Presley stopped his motorcade for a crying boy and his lost dog, and he knew somehow that Elvis wouldn't forget it either. The memory of that day and the special invitation became a cherished cornerstone of Timmy's life. He still lived with his mother, still went to school, still played with Buster in the park. But every few months the sleek black Cadillac would pull up to his curb, and a new adventure would begin. Elvis, true to his word, remained a presence in Timmy's life. It wasn't always a grand public affair. Often it was just Elvis and Timmy. Sometimes Elvis would send his chauffeur to pick Timmy up, and sometimes, if his schedule allowed, Elvis himself would come. These visits to Graceland were always highlights for Timmy. He got to see the changing seasons at the mansion, watch Elvis's horses graze in the pasture, and play with Buster and Elvis's growing collection of dogs. One sunny Saturday morning, Elvis greeted Timmy with a warm smile. "Hey, Champ, ready for some fun? Timmy now." "Always, Mr. Elvis." Elvis had a way of making Timmy feel completely at ease. Like an old friend, he never treated Timmy like a fan or a charity case, but as a genuine peer, someone whose company he truly enjoyed. Today, Elvis had a special plan. "How about we shoot some pool in the basement? You think you can beat the king?" he teased. His eyes twinkling, Timmy's eyes lit up. In the famous basement of Graceland, with its yellow and black paneled walls and the custom-made pool table, Elvis patiently taught Timmy how to hold the cue, how to aim, and the basic rules of the game. He let Timmy win a few games, but also challenged him, guiding him with gentle advice. "See, Timmy, it's not just about hitting the ball hard," Elvis explained, demonstrating a delicate shot. "It's about strategy, thinking a few steps ahead, kinda like life, huh?" Timmy absorbed every word, every lesson. He loved listening to Elvis talk, loved the way he infused everyday things with his own unique wisdom. They talked about school, about Timmy's new friends, about his drawings. Elvis encouraged his art, even commissioning Timmy to draw a picture of Buster, which he proudly displayed in his private office. After pool, they sometimes went outside. Elvis would play fetch with Buster and his own dogs, throwing a tennis ball across the vast lawn. Timmy would run alongside them, laughing as Buster, surprisingly agile despite his growing girth, outmaneuvered the bigger dogs for the ball. One particular afternoon, Elvis led Timmy to his trophy room, a place Timmy found endlessly fascinating. Gold records, awards, movie posters, and photographs covered the walls. "Mr. Elvis," Timmy asked, looking up at a gleaming gold record for a song he knew from the radio, "how did you get so many of these? Were you scared when you first started singing?" Elvis chuckled softly. "Scared, Timmy? I was terrified. Every single time. Still am sometimes, but you do it anyway. You get up there and you sing from your heart, and you try to connect with people, and if you're lucky, they connect back." He pointed to an old photograph of himself, young and vibrant on stage. "These records, they're just pieces of metal, Timmy. What they represent is the connection, the feeling. That's what truly matters." He sat down on a nearby chair, gesturing for Timmy to join him. "And how did I get so many?" "Well, it takes a lot of hard work, and a lot of people who believe in you, and a little bit of magic, I suppose." He winked. Timmy looked at the records again, seeing them not just as shiny objects, but as symbols of effort, passion, and human connection. He thought about his own small drawings, how he felt when he put his heart into them. He understood. Sometimes Elvis would invite Timmy to the small private screening room, and they'd watch a movie together, sharing popcorn and laughing at the funny parts. These moments, away from the glare of publicity, were intimate and genuine. Elvis treated Timmy not just as a visitor, but as a young friend he genuinely cared about. He made sure Timmy always left with a full stomach, a new toy or book, and a sense of wonder. But more than that, Timmy left with a sense of worth, a feeling that he mattered, that he was seen. Elvis had given him more than just an amazing experience. He had given him confidence and an expanded view of the world. Timmy's mom, Sarah, witnessed the change in her son. He was more outgoing, more confident in school. He talked about Elvis not as a distant celebrity, but as a kind, wise friend who taught him things. She knew how incredibly lucky they were, and she was endlessly grateful. These visits were a quiet joy for Elvis, too. Away from the demands of his career, the expectations of his fans, and the complexities of his adult relationships, Timmy represented a pure, uncomplicated friendship. He was a reminder of the simple values he held dear, the boy from Tupelo who had always valued kindness and sincerity above all else. Timmy's unvarnished honesty and innocent wonder were a refreshing balm for Elvis's often tumultuous life. As the years passed, Timmy's visits continued, though perhaps less frequently, as Elvis's schedule grew even more demanding. And Timmy himself grew older, with his own friends and interests. The bond remained a quiet, steadfast connection that started with a lost beagle and a king who stopped his world for a crying child. Years passed, the seasons turning, the world continuing its relentless spin. Elvis Presley remained the king, his music echoing through airwaves and concert halls, his legend growing with each passing year. But for a young man named Timmy, now in his late teens, Elvis was more than just a legend. He was a pivotal figure, a kind mentor, and an unexpected friend. Timmy had grown into a thoughtful, artistic young man. He was still a bit quiet, but his confidence had blossomed. He excelled in art classes, his drawings filled with life and emotion. Buster, now an old silver-muzzled beagle, still trotted faithfully by his side, a testament to the day. Elvis had stopped his motorcade. The regular visits to Graceland had become less frequent over the years, as Elvis's schedule became impossibly demanding and Timmy began to navigate his own path into adulthood. But the occasional phone call from Elvis's private line or an unexpected gift of art supplies served as a quiet reminder of their unique bond. One crisp autumn afternoon, Timmy received a call from Graceland. It wasn't Elvis this time, but his assistant, who invited Timmy and Buster for a special quiet lunch with Elvis. Timmy, heart swelling with anticipation, immediately said yes. When the Cadillac arrived, Timmy, now nearly as tall as Red, West approached the car with a familiar sense of warmth. Buster, moving a little slower these days, still managed a happy bark, a little more tired around the eyes perhaps, but still radiating that undeniable charisma. "Timmy, look at you all grown up," Elvis exclaimed, pulling Timmy into a warm, genuine hug. Buster nudged Elvis's hand with his nose, demanding a scratch behind the ears. Elvis obliged, a soft smile on his face. The lunch was quiet, intimate. Elvis asked Timmy about his plans for college, about his art, about his dreams. Timmy, feeling comfortable, spoke openly about wanting to go to art school, about his hopes of becoming a graphic designer. Elvis listened intently, offering gentle advice, sharing his own experiences of chasing dreams. "Takes courage, Timmy," Elvis said, looking at him with earnest eyes. "A lot of courage to follow your heart, but it's always worth it. Don't let anyone tell you you can't do it." As the afternoon wound down, Timmy felt a familiar pang of gratitude. Elvis had given him so much, not just materially, but emotionally. He had shown him that even the most famous person in the world could be profoundly kind, that genuine connection was more valuable than fame, and that a single act of compassion could change a life. Before Timmy left, Elvis walked into the car, one hand resting on Buster's head. "Timmy," he said, his voice a little softer, a little more reflective. "That day when I saw you crying on the side of the road, it reminded me of something important. It reminded me that no matter how big things get, how crazy life becomes, there's always room for a little kindness. For just being there for someone who needs it." He looked at Timmy, a profound sincerity in his gaze. "You taught me that, Timmy." He had never thought of it that way, that he could have taught Elvis anything. He was just a kid who had lost his dog. "Thank you, Mr. Elvis," Timmy said, his voice thick with emotion, "for everything, for stopping, for being my friend." Elvis smiled, a genuine, heart-warming smile. "Anytime, son, anytime." As Red drove Timmy and Buster home, Timmy looked back at Graceland, the grand white mansion receding in the distance. He knew that life would continue to change, that Elvis's world was vastly different from his own, and that their interactions might become even rarer, but the essence of their connection, forged in a moment of pure human empathy, would remain. He knew that the little boy who cried on the curb, feeling utterly lost and hopeless, had found more than just his dog that day. He had found a guardian angel, a source of inspiration, and a profound lesson in the power of unexpected kindness. And Elvis Presley, the king who had paused his motorcade for a small, weeping child, carried a quiet piece of that simple, heartwarming encounter with him, a reminder that even amidst the dazzling lights of fame, the truest treasures were found in the deepest wells of human connection. The motorcade would continue its journey, but the heart of the king had been touched forever, changed by a lost beagle and a boy who desperately loved him.